You step off a steamer in Apia, the capital of German Samoa, and the first thing that hits you isn't the heat, it's the scent. Salt air mixed with sun-baked coconuts fermenting in the tropical sun, destined to become the oil that powers lamps in Berlin, soaps in London, and industrial grease in factories across Europe. This is no sleepy island paradise, it's a business empire, run not by generals or governors, but by German traders who turned coconuts into gold. By 1914, they had built one of the most powerful commercial operations in the Pacific, their influence stretching far beyond economics into politics, culture, and daily life. But beneath the palm trees and profits, trouble was brewing. Because when the world went to war, paradise became a battleground. And in the space of just a few years, the Copra Kings of Samoa lost everything. Let's rewind and see how it all began. In the late 1800s, the Western powers were racing across the globe, carving up colonies and planting flags. But while others focused on land and military bases, Germany saw something different in the South Pacific, a commercial opportunity hidden in plain sight. The islands of Samoa, with their rich volcanic soil, steady rainfall, and endless groves of coconut palms, were perfect for agricultural exploitation. And Germany, a rising industrial power hungry for raw materials, wasn't about to miss out. Enter the Deutsche Handels- und Plantagengesellschaft der Südsee-Inseln zu Hamburg, or DHPG for short. The name was long, but the goal was simple: dominate Pacific trade. Backed by Hamburg's wealthy merchant families and the full weight of German imperial ambition, the company wasted no time. They didn't just open shops, they built a system, a network of plantations, warehouses, steamships, and trading stations that turned raw coconuts into hard currency. Their main product was copra, the dried meat of the coconut. Once processed, it became oil, essential for everything from soap and candles to industrial lubricants in an era before petroleum took over. By the early 18th century, German traders controlled over 75% of all commerce in Samoa. That wasn't an exaggeration. It was a fact. Coconut plantations stretched across the islands like a patchwork quilt. The DHPG alone operated more than 170 trading posts throughout the Pacific, and Samoa was their nerve center, their prize. These men weren't stereotypical colonial overlords. They were merchants, efficient, disciplined, and ruthlessly focused on profit. But with that came infrastructure. They built wharves, roads, warehouses, and homes. They introduced modern farming techniques and brought in laborers from across the region to meet the growing demand. Apia, the capital, transformed into a bustling town. German-built colonial mansions lined its streets. The company even operated its own postal service, ran hospitals, and established a bank. One British official, not known for praising rivals, grudgingly admitted in 1912, "The German trading houses have made themselves indispensable to the economic life of these islands. Their efficiency and organization are remarkable." But all of this success was built on one fragile assumption: that the world beyond the coconut groves would remain stable. In August 1914, that illusion shattered. When World War I broke out in Europe, it wasn't just armies that were mobilized. It was empires. And in a world where allegiance determined ownership, Germany's Pacific outposts instantly became targets. Just 10 days after Britain declared war on Germany, New Zealand troops acting on behalf of the British Empire arrived off the coast of Samoa. Their mission: take the islands, and take them fast. German Governor Dr. Erich Schulze-Ewirth faced a grim choice. His police force was lightly armed and vastly outnumbered. Resistance would mean bloodshed, with no hope of victory. So, without firing a shot, the German administration surrendered peacefully. At 8 a.m. on August 29, 1914, the German flag came down. The Union Jack went up. Overnight, everything changed. For the German traders, this marked the beginning of the end. The New Zealand military administration, following orders from London, moved swiftly. All German-owned property was seized. That included the DHPG's plantations, warehouses, ships, and homes. Private residences were confiscated, bank accounts frozen, offices shut down. The once mighty DHPG, built over decades, was dismantled almost overnight. Ships carrying German copra were intercepted. The intricate network that kept Samoa's economy humming, credit lines, shipping routes, export contracts, collapsed. But this wasn't just a story of corporations and governments. It was deeply personal. Many German families had lived in Samoa for generations. Their children spoke Samoan, German, and English. Some had intermarried with local families. They weren't foreign occupiers. They were part of the fabric of island life. Still, under the rules of war, they were now enemy aliens. Men were arrested and held in internment camps. Others were deported. Businesses, no matter how local or rooted in the community, were either sold off to allied firms or simply absorbed into government control. A few tried to keep operating quietly under local names, but the economic engine was broken. One trader, Friedrich Cruz, recorded in his journal, 30 years of work in paradise, gone in an instant. Our neighbors do not look us in the eye. Our houses are no longer ours. The land remembers us, but the law does not. This swift and brutal dismantling didn't just hurt the Germans, it devastated the local economy. The Germans, for all their imperial baggage, had run a tightly organized, highly efficient operation. They managed labor with strict but consistent systems. Crops were rotated, workers were paid regularly, shipping was predictable. With the Germans gone, chaos crept in. The New Zealand administration lacked the experience, and often the interest, to run the plantations effectively. Copra production plummeted. Workers, now unpaid or unmanaged, abandoned the fields. Shipping routes dried up, and then came the global shipping crisis triggered by the war. Merchant vessels were diverted for military use. German ships, which had once regularly serviced Apia, were either seized or forced into hiding in neutral ports. Samoa was now a warehouse with no exit. Mountains of copra sat rotting in the sun. By 1916, unemployment had soared. Small traders, many of whom relied on the Germans for credit and exports, were ruined. Samoan chiefs, once treated as business partners by the German firms, now found themselves ignored by indifferent colonial bureaucrats. Even as the war dragged on in Europe, the damage in Samoa was done. The commercial empire had collapsed. After the war ended in 1918, there was a flicker of hope that perhaps the Germans might return. But the Treaty of Versailles crushed that hope for good. Under the terms of the treaty, Germany lost all its overseas colonies, including Samoa. The properties seized in 1914 were never returned. German nationals who tried to file compensation claims found themselves tied up in red tape or flatly denied. The Copra kings were gone, scattered back to Europe or resettled in other corners of the Pacific. A few tried to rebuild, but the old world they knew no longer existed. The DHPG was restructured and continued to operate in limited ways elsewhere, but its Pacific empire was finished. In the power vacuum, British, Australian, and New Zealand companies rushed in. But despite their best efforts, they never matched the scale or precision of the German network. Production never returned to its former heights. The infrastructure decayed. Even the plantations that remained fell into decline as labor shortages, mismanagement, and the global depression of the 1930s took their toll. And yet, the legacy remains. To this day, in Apia, you can still find the skeletal remains of old German warehouses, solid, elegant, weather-stained reminders of a different era. The wide roads they built still shape the town's layout. The coconut palms still sway in the breeze, descendants of trees planted over a century ago for the benefit of distant markets. Samoa's economy, too, bears the imprint of those years. The collapse of the German Empire forced the islands to diversify, shifting toward agriculture, tourism, and services in the decades that followed. The idea of depending entirely on copra, that died with the DHPG. But more than anything, the story of the German traders is a study in how fragile even the most powerful systems can be. They had everything: land, labor, capital, and time. They were organized, embedded, and effective. And yet in just a few years, all of it vanished. Why? Not because of a bad business decision or local revolt, but because of a war on the other side of the world. A decision made in the halls of Europe that rippled across oceans and brought a Pacific empire to its knees. And that's what makes their story worth remembering, not just for what they built, but for how quickly it was taken away. The fall of Samoa's German trading empire is more than a footnote in history. It's a powerful lesson in how quickly fortunes can change. For decades, the Copra Kings had ruled their tropical paradise, weaving themselves into the island's economy and society. They built roads, plantations, and a way of life that seemed unshakable. But global forces beyond their control tore it all apart in just a few short years. The ruins of their colonial mansions and warehouses still stand in Apia, not as monuments to conquest, but as silent witnesses to the rise and fall of an economic empire shaped by ambition, industry, and, ultimately, war. Today, Samoa is a nation that has moved beyond the shadow of those German traders. Its economy is more diverse, its people more empowered, and its history richer for having survived such upheaval. But the story of the Copra Kings reminds us that economic power is fragile. It depends on more than wealth or control. It depends on peace, stability, and the complex webs of trust that war can destroy in an instant. As you think about this story, consider the hidden empires around us today, built quietly, carefully, and how vulnerable they might be to forces beyond their control. If you found this dive into history compelling, please hit subscribe and ring the bell for more stories that uncover the past and illuminate our world today. What other forgotten empires or lost industries would you like to explore? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.